If you were asked to pick a typical English village, the chances are you would choose Castle Combe. Stunningly beautiful and full of character. It would come as no surprise to find that it was once voted the prettiest village in England. Built mainly from Cotswold stone, the streets and alleyways draw you in, delighting the visitor at every turn. Little has changed here in hundreds of years, and as you wander about, it is not hard to imagine what it must have been like to live here in the 15th century, the time when most of the village was built. Situated on the River Bybrook, Castle Combe is a must-see on any visitor's list. Just outside the village is the prestigious Castle Combe Golf Club. This challenging, world-class 18-hole course offers something for all golfers who visit the area. More importantly, the course now encompasses the site on which the Norman castle was built. In use since Neolithic times, the present outline is typical of a moat and bailey fortification, similar to this one. A flat, promontory of land overlooking the valley gave a good view of any potential invader. One, sometimes two ditches were dug around the settlement, adding a further hazard to the already tough security. It is known that Saxons occupied this site prior to 1066, taking advantage of its clear views along the valley. The early settlement consisted of a group of houses, built mainly of wood and thatch, which were surrounded by a strong wooden fence. There was only one way in or out, and this was heavily guarded around the clock. They lived in communal buildings and shared the house space with their precious animals, one end of the building being given over to their living quarters. During the winter, the animals were kept permanently indoors, out of harm's way, until the warm spring weather released them. The largest house was where the chief lived, and all village feasts and celebrations took place here. This larger building tended to have a smaller building attached, acting like a porch. After the invasion of 1066, the Normans brought their own style of security to England. This usually took the form of a tall, wooden fence, entered by crossing a bridge which could, on certain buildings, be drawn up. This led you through to a strong, well-guarded gate. The villagers and men-at-arms would be secure within the first fence ring. However, any invader managing to get through the first line of defence still had a second fence to negotiate. They also had to climb a huge, steep, strength-sapping earth mound if they wanted to capture the lord of the manor. It was this design that was to prove so successful for the Normans. Finally, the whole structure was surrounded by a deep ditch or moat, enabling the whole settlement to live in relative peace. On the 10th green, the moat can still be seen, enabling one to imagine how it may have looked. On this part of the course you are surrounded by large mounds of earth that formed part of the fortification. For it was at this place, in 1140, that Reginald de Dunsterville built the first Norman stronghold and put the castle into Castle Combe. The course is built in an area of outstanding natural beauty and has footpaths that can be explored by members and visitors alike. There is much to see here for those with a keen eye. first manor house was built on this site in the latter part of the 14th century after the castle fell into disrepair. In 1459, the Scrope family inherited the estate and set about some serious renovations, adding, amongst other things, a corn mill. The remains of the mill race can still be seen today at the rear of the building. In 1825, yet more extensive alterations took place when the entire frontage was redesigned and 2 new wings were added, one each side of the main doorway. This resulted in the beautiful building you see today. During the Second World War, the manor was requisitioned by the government and spent the time as a hospital for the local RAF units, after which, in 1947, it was sold. Today, it is an exclusive hotel and golf club set in 365 acres on the edge of the Cotswolds. At the heart of the village is the Market Cross, supported on 4 substantial columns. Its purpose was to bring Christian ethics to all commercial transactions held here on market days. The privilege of holding a weekly market was granted by Henry VI in 1440. The cross, which rises to a striking spire, dates back to the 14th century. The stone roof was added about 100 years later. It still retains many original features, like the oak beams that support the roof, which still has its wattle and daub covering. The base of the cross is finely carved with shields and roses, and may have been detailed with Reginald de Dunsterville's coat of arms. The skill of the stonemason is there for all to see. On the south side of the village square stands a very distinctive half-timbered building which was once the village courthouse. During the Middle Ages, sittings of the court leet were held. All parishioners were answerable to the lord of the manor, who was responsible for law and order. The carpenter's cut marks can still be seen. During internal building work in the 1970s, a wall painting of the heraldic arms of Henry VIII was discovered. In the 1700s, the local constable lived in the house next door. At the rear was a lock-up where the unruly villager could be left to cool his heels. Just near the cross are the 2 pubs that still remain in the village. The Castle Inn used to be called the Salutation at the Cross. It was in popular use as a resting place for monks making the pilgrimage to Glastonbury from Malmesbury. The long building may well have been used as the brewery and still retains some fine architectural details. Today it is an excellent hotel where you can sit a while and enjoy the beauty of the village. Historic reminders are all around. Across from the Castle Inn is one of the oldest buildings in the village. This is the White Hart, and the facade that you see today hides its half-timbered construction. This is probably the oldest public house in the parish, and beer has been sold here for over 500 years. A more recent addition to the market square is the Buttercross, now the perfect place to pass the time of day. It was constructed in the 19th century as a mountain block and horse tether, and stands on the site of what was once the half-timbered market house. The visitor is well catered for, and the post office in the marketplace will supply most of your needs. Halfway up the hill is the Dower House, an impressive gabled building built around 1700. Since 1804, it was always the traditional home of the local doctor, and so it remained when Hollywood took over the village in 1966. It was the Dower House that became Dr. Dolittle's home in that very memorable film. It has many fine features that are typical of the period. Not least is the wonderful example of a shell porch. It is decorated with the shield of the Le Scrope family. This design, a blue filled with gold stripe, was awarded by the High Court of Judgment in 1390. Heading back into the village, you will find the malt house on the left. Now a private dwelling, this building has many things to delight the eye. The stone-tiled roof and the mullioned windows are typical Cotswold design. There was once 10 pubs in the parish, so this place was kept very busy indeed. Some windows have an archway built over them. At first glance, it appears that some earlier window has been blocked in, but this is not the case. This was the medieval builder's answer to the concrete lintel and was put in to support the weight of the building above. The Church of St Andrew is documented as far back as 1291, and the first known rector was Adam de Codford in 1306. In 1850, the church had become so undermined by the grave digging that the foundations started to collapse, and apart from the tower, most of the rest of the church was rebuilt. This was done, of course, in the style of the day, and the Victorians replaced many original features. The tower was started in 1435, with most of the cost being put up by the wealthy clothiers, for which Castle Combe was famous. Inside, the visitor can see many things that will make the trip much more memorable, such as the beautifully carved arches and the magnificent beamed roof. The south aisle was added from a bequest by Sir John Falstaff, the then Lord of the Manor. Throughout the church, there is always something to please the eye, with its fine attention to detail. Each turn of the head brings into focus a craftsman's art. The peaceful ambience of the church will help you wonder at what changes this building has seen. It seems the perfect resting place for Sir Walter de Dunstanville, the first Baron of Castle Combe. Just along from the present church entrance stands the original gate to the churchyard. Now closed off, it makes a fitting memorial to those from Castle Combe who left, never to return. Walk along West Street to Park Lane and you will find the old gatehouse to the manor. Its proper name is the Garrett's House and was first mentioned in 1492. Spanning the road, it gave the gatekeeper a commanding view of any visitor wishing to enter. Walk through, and this will lead you to the less well photographed parts of Castle Combe. Cosy cottages nestle down in the quiet corners, keeping watch over hidden secret tracks. Follow them, and you will get a view of the village that is not in any of the guidebooks. Be alert, and you will discover signs of a baronial past in the most unlikely of places. Castle Combe is a typical example of a Saxon street layout in which most of the houses are strung out along a single track. Being on the edge of the Cotswolds, it is built of that lovely warm stone that has become so famous in this part of Britain. During the Middle Ages, as the woolen industry reached its peak, the village boomed and was much more extensive than it is now. The gabled houses snuggle side by side as if jostling for room, each showing off their own unique style. This large, imposing building is Parsonage House, which is now called the Rectory, behind which once stood the estate yard, with workshops and an ancient tithe barn. Unfortunately, it was pulled down to make way for the village hall. The entrance to the yard was fronted by a large gatehouse, which also shared the same fate. The only thing that remains is the large buttress at the end of the building, on which one of the gates hung. There are many references to old skills and craftsmanship. Doors, your first line of defence, were built to withstand the rigours of time. Corbett Cottage still has its original 16th century door, built of solid English oak, which was probably growing when Henry VIII was on the throne. It has rows of studs to add strength, and still has its original hinges and lock, all made from wrought iron. Other doors in the village may be more recent in construction, but are still in keeping with the feel and look of such ancient buildings. There is a certain pride here that benefits resident and visitor alike. The terrace of cottages in the main street has much to delight those with an eye to see them. Walk too quickly, and you would soon pass this example of ancient craftsmanship. This window has stood the test of time and still performs the job it was meant to do when it was fitted in the 14th century. The main street that leads from the cross is Water Street. At the southern end is the old post office. Once a 15th century weaver's cottage, it is now a gift shop and gallery, where the discerning visitor is able to spend some time choosing that special gift as a reminder to their visit here. A little further on, and a picture postcard site awaits. There is little doubt that Castle Combe truly deserves all the accolades that have been showered upon it over the years. The subject of countless postcards, chocolate boxes and jigsaws, it has views that are known around the world. You may remember this part of the village that became the wharf during the filming of Dr. Dolittle. With a bit of movie magic, it was transformed into the seaport of Puddleby-on-the-Marsh. The weavers' cottages in Water Lane now stand as a proud reminder of the prosperous past. The weavers, who were held in high esteem, worked their looms in their homes, clearly enjoying one of the prime sights in the village. It was Sir John Falstaff, lord of the manor in the 15th century, that brought good fortune to Castle Combe. During the 100 Years' War, he insisted that his men-at-arms wore only the hard-wearing red and white cloth that was produced in the village, and so, single-handedly, ensured its future prosperity. The Middle Ages were the heyday of the cloth industry, and Castle Combe was luckier than most. All its needs were to be found within the valley. Two of its most famous inhabitants were the Blanket brothers. Both were master weavers living near the river. Their cold, damp cottages were the reason that they sat down one evening and wove a new style of thick, warm cloth covering for their beds. They gave it their name, and the rest is history. As you meander down the road, the Bybrook guides you to the outer edge of the village. You will, after a short time, come across the old stone bridge. It is commonly known as the Roman Bridge, for it is said that on certain nights, when the moon is just right, a ghost of a Roman soldier can be seen crossing. Its real name is Smart's Bridge, named after the owner of a mill that once stood on this site. This bridge marks the boundary of the village. The Bybrook will continue on its way for another 9 miles before meeting up with the River Avon near the Georgian city of Bath. As you turn back to the village, several things may catch your eye. This dovecot, now blocked up, once enabled the owner to put meat on the table when hunting was the sole preserve of the lord of the manor. Georgian sits next to the medieval, making Castle Combe what it is today. It is easy to see why people choose to live here. This is a living, working village, preserving its links with the past but keeping one eye on the future. You may base yourself here for a holiday, or your stay may be but a fleeting look into the past. It matters not, for there is always a welcome here. It is nice just to take a break from the modern world and sit for a while, imagining what life might have been like all those centuries ago, in the heart of England, in Castle Combe, the village for all time.